أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله سيد المرسلين وخاتم النبيين ورحمة للعالمين وصلى الله على آله الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا أوصيكم عباد الله ونفسي بتقوى الله. The Shia world is getting ready to commemorate the Azza of Sayyid al-Shuhada and his family and his companions. And it's appropriate for us to remind ourselves again of the purpose and the mission of Hussein ibn Ali, so that we can mentally, prepare ourselves that when we are going through these memorial services for that event, what should be our outlook, what should be the purpose. And the best way to do that is to go to the written will of the Imam, which he wrote before leaving Medina, and he addressed him in that his own brother Muhammad Hanafiya. If you look at the main part of the will, there is a preamble to it where he declares his faith to Allah and the Rasul and the Quran and the Qiyamah. And then he talks about, the purpose. He begins with a negative statement, denying motivations which will be attributed towards him. So Imam knew that there will be people who are in the service of the government who will try to write history in a way that will portray that he had some ulterior motives in what he was doing. And just to close that door, he begins with that by saying, لَمْ أَخْرُجْ أَشَرًا وَلَا بَطَرًا وَلَا ظَالِمًا وَلَا مُفْسِدًا. He says, I have not risen against Yazid, because of arrogance or seeking, adventure. A person who goes for seeking adventure doesn't take his children with him. وَلَا ظَالِمًا, and I'm not even being unjust to anyone by doing what I'm doing. وَلَا مُفْسِدًا, and I don't even want to create mischief or fasad and chaos in the society. And then he comes to the positive response. إِنَّمَا خَرَجْتُ لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ فِي أُمَّةِ جَدِّي. In Arabic, the word إِنَّمَا is used for hasr, that my purpose is only one thing. I have risen against Yazid only for one purpose, and that is, what is that? طَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ, to seek reformation in the community of my grandfather. This is where the whole issue is, that, during those 50 years after the Prophet, the Ummah had gone towards fasad, towards misguidance, towards corruption, deformation. And Hussein ibn Ali wants to bring the Ummah back by reforming them. Sometimes the deformation reaches to a point where normal means of reforming are not working. And this is where we, need some very extraordinary steps. And this is where Hussein ibn Ali, decided to adopt the path of sacrificing himself and his family members in order to awaken the slumbering conscience of the Muslim Ummah. And then he, in a way, explains that what I'm doing is nothing out of the Islamic norms. What I'm doing, he explains that under the a very important social teaching in Islam, he says, أريد أن أأمر بالمعروف وأنهي عن المنكر. What I'm doing is actually using these two very important social principles of bidding people to do good and forbidding them from evil. And again, emphasizing the point that what I'm doing is not a bid'ah, it's not something unique. وَأَسِيرَ بِسِيرَةِ جَدِّي وَعَبِي عَلِي بِنْ أَبِي طَالِبٍ. And by doing this, it's nothing new. I'm continuing the path of my grandfather and my father, Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. And so there are 4 points there. One, negating wrong motives towards him, expressing what is his purpose, the method in Sharia that he is using for that, and the precedence in form of the seerah of the Prophet and his father. And this is where we have to realize that this is an ongoing, process when we talk about reform. Sometimes it reaches to that stage where you need this sacrifice of Hussein ibn Ali. But then on an individual level, on a collective level, there is always room for improvement. And this is where we have to realize that when we go through the Azab, Sayyid al-Shuhada, we have to look at ourselves, people around us, those whom we can influence in the family members, circle of friends, and the community at large, so that we can become better Muslims. On a personal level, it would be just like the month of Ramadan. But this is a very emotionally, charged environment and timing for us, where we have to think about it. On a personal level, are we really into this issue of paying attention to the prayers? If we are doing this, can we improve? What about doing it on the time rather than delaying it? The issue of fasting, the issue of, sharing what Allah has given to us with less fortunate members in the community in form of charities. The issue of, even reflecting on our own means of livelihood, how we earn the money and how we spend it. On a social level, it is important for us to see, when you look at Karbala, Karbala is actually a universal example for many things. The brotherhood that you see in Karbala, the unity of the Shuhada, in spite of the diversity in their race, their color, their language, ethnic background. But they were all one. And this is where we have to think about it. When we are doing the Azab, Sayyid al-Shuhada, how do we relate to the fellow Shia, especially Shia Isna Asharis? Are we looking at a different color and language and culture? Or are we looking at everyone as, those who are tied in this wilayat of Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salatu wassalam? Hussein was not only for Shias, he was for Muslims in general. What is our outlook towards the Muslim Ummah? Yes, there are many problems. We have suffered in the past. We are suffering even now at the hands of the extremists. But not all Sunnis are extremists. Extremists actually have hijacked, the Muslim world. And this is where we have to see, our concern for what is going on globally as far as the Muslim Ummah is concerned, and also on the level of humanity. According to one of the famous Urdu poet, he says, let humanity reach to its level of maturity, and then every nation in the world will say Hussein belongs to us, irrespective of the religion and faith. Because the message that Imam Hussein alayhi salam had given was very universal. So what is our outlook towards, fellow human beings who might not be Shia, might not be Muslims? And this is where, we have to look at this issue of when we talk about reforming ourselves, by looking at the Islamic values, how close we are getting into it. And this is when I would like to end with the words from the ziyarat, one of the ziyarats which have been taught to us by Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. Although there is a lot of attack these days, questioning the credibility of the ziyarat, but I tell you, look at the wordings. You will see there is quite a lot in there to learn. The sixth Imam, in one of the ziyarat, he says that remember the moment where Hussein ibn Ali was asking for help. And then respond to it. In which way? He says, إن كان لم يجبك بدني عند استغاثتك ولساني عند استنصارك. O Hussein, I was not there. I was not yet born. So I could not physically respond to your call for help. But I am responding to you now. In which way? فَقَدْ أَجَابَكَ. The sixth Imam is teaching us that you respond to Hussein's call in this way. فَقَدْ أَجَابَكَ قَلْبِي وَسَمْعِي وَبَصَرِي وَرَأْيِي وَحَوَائِي على التسليم. This is where Imam is saying, say to Hussein that my heart, my mind, my ears, my eyes, my opinions and my desires all submit to you. You know, many times you have this problem, and it's a human weakness. I don't deny that. People go through it. Probably everyone goes through it. That sometimes we'll say, well, we know this is not allowed. Lekin kya kare, dil chahta hai. You know, I know this is haram, but my heart is this way. The issue is you are saying to Hussein, قَدْ أَجَابَكَ قَلْبِي عَلَى التَّسْلِيم. My heart is submitting to you. When you give your heart to Hussein ibn Ali, it is no more yours to make that choice. You will have to make the same choice that Hussein ibn Ali would want you to make at that time. And this is where we have to realize that yes, Azan is not only remembering the event, but trying to connect to Imam. And this is one way by looking at the ziyarat that we have from the Imams who came later on. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to understand the purpose of the Azan of Sayyid al-Shuhada in the right way, inshallah. إن أحسن الحديث كتاب الله العزيز بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحليم الكريم غافر الذنب وقابل التوب وهو الغفور الرحيم ونشهد أن لا إله إلا هو العطوف للعباد بجوده والعواد على المظلمين بحلمه ونشهد أن محمدا نبيه وحبيبه سيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين ورحمة للعالمين صلى الله عليه وآله الداعين إلى سبيل الله بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة قادة الأمم وأولياء النعمة ومعدن الرحمة أوصيكم عباد الله بالتوبة ما سلف من ذنوبكم. I mentioned this issue that we have to realize we do not live in isolation. We are actually surrounded by different circles around us. You have the inner circle of the Shias of Ahlul Bayt. Then you have a bigger circle around it of the Muslim Ummah who do not necessarily follow the same madhab as ours. And then there is a outer bigger circle of humanity at large. And this is where we have to realize, how do we interact with them? There are three alifs, if you can keep it in mind. One is ithar, which means to sacrifice. Other is infaq, which means to be charitable. And the third one is insaf, to be just. When it comes to the inner circle of the Shias, the expectation is that there should be willingness for ithar for one another. To do even more than what is required, to go beyond the call of duty. When it comes to the issue of, The Muslims who are not necessarily from the Shia background, there the issue of infaq is there, to be charitable towards them. And when it comes to the issue of the outer circle, and we are talking about the minimum requirements, is the issue of to be just with them. That doesn't mean you cannot be charitable towards them, but at least maintain the sense of justice and adl when you're dealing with non-Muslims. What does Hussein ibn Ali do? You know, in the different manazil that he covered, stations where he stopped at a place called Sharaf. There is a narration by Tabari, a Sunni historian. And this is for those who believe that, there is no ilm ghaib. There is ilm ghaib as a grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the chosen ones. It's not something which is acquired. You cannot get a degree and say, yes, I have ilm ghaib. You can't do anything to have ilm ghaib. It is the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the manzil, not as sharaf, these were actually the areas where, for example, when the caravans go, the guide who is there, he knows from one manzil to the next one, it's 1 day or 2 day or 3 days journey. And manzil is that place where they have provision for water and food. So the guide will tell them, okay, from next 2 days we'll be traveling, but there will be no water, so take your provision for 2 days. In Manzil al-Sharaf, according to Tabari, he says, early in the morning, Hussein asked his caravan to get ready to continue the journey. Then he called the young men who were assigned with the duty of filling the water bags. And they were, one or more camel dedicated for that, to carry the water bags. So they were basically the trucks which take the luggage, for example. And he called them and he said, today, when you take the water, take extra. This is in Manzil Sharaf. Didn't do it before, didn't do it after that. Why? They continue the journey just before Zuhr. This is where the caravan of Imam Hussein now meets the 1,000 horsemen cavalry of Hur. And what happened in that first meeting? When they came close by, Imam Hussein ibn Ali saw that it was very clear that they have run out of water. The signs of thirst was visible on their faces as well as on the horses. This is where he calls his young people, bring the water and feed them. Quench their thirst. For all the soldiers. Not only that, where he says, اسقوا القوم وعروهم من الماء ورشفوا الخير, even water the horses. The last rider, probably he was actually on the camel, and he was slow. And he came a little bit late. Hussein ibn Ali saw him, that he was really in a bad condition. Hussein didn't wait for the volunteers to go to him. He took a water bag himself and goes to that last rider and quenches his thirst. The point here is that Hussein ibn Ali didn't ask Hur, have you come to me as a supporter or as an enemy? He saw the thirst and he provided that. This is the sign of, humanity that we talk about. After all, he was the grandson of Rahmatun lil Alameen. And yet you see in Karbala, Yazidi forces denied water. And this is the imtihan. That Hussein who knew that Hur is going to come and he's going to be thirsty with his cavalry force, Hussein took extra water. People will say, why didn't he do that for himself and his people? That is the difference. He will use his ilm ghaib in order to guide the others. He will never use ilm ghaib for his own benefit. That is the imtihan. That is the test and trial. He knew that yes, water would be stopped. And they were thirsty for 3 days. Hussein didn't say, let's take extra water there, because that was the imtihan they had to go through. Their ilm ghaib cannot be used. There is a purpose for it. Yes, Hussein personally started using less water than all other shuhada of Karbala. The most thirsty person on the day of Ashura was Hussein ibn Ali. Because he knew. But he stopped himself. You know, the amount of water he was drinking was less than others. And this is where we have to realize the greatness of this Imam. And so when we talk about the Aza of Sayyid al-Shuhada, this is where we have to think about these issues, how we treat one another, how we treat even others. Especially, you know, I would like to just repeat the message. I had given this before, but since this is just before, you know, beginning of the month of Muharram coming very soon, when it comes to the volunteers, you know, you really have to be extra careful. Remember, those who come as Azadar of Sayyid al-Shuhada, they are your guest. They are the guest of Hussein ibn Ali. And you, on behalf of Hussein, are the host. So treat them in that way. Look at your own position at that time. And this is where always remember the example of Hussein, the way he dealt with Hur. And that is where we see the use of ilm al-ghaib in order to guide people. It was that kindness, that generosity of Hussein ibn Ali, which forced Hur to think about his position. And eventually on the day of Ashura, Hur comes towards Hussein ibn Ali and became one of the Shuhada of Karbala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to follow the example of Hussein ibn Ali. اللهم صل على سيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وعلى إمام المتقين وأمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب صلوات الله عليه وعلى سيدة النساء العالمين سيدتنا فاطمة بنت رسول الله صلوات الله عليها وعلى سيد شباب أهل الجنة الحسن المجتبى والحسين الشهيد بكربلاء عليهم الصلاة والسلام اللهم صل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي عليهم الصلاة والسلام اللهم صل على مولانا الحجة بن الحسن صاحب العصر والزمان ما أحيا آثار البدء والطغيان هادم أمنية الشرك والنفاق حاسد فروع البغي والشقاق صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آبائه الكرام ما اتصلت الليالي والأيام اللهم عجل فرجه وسهل مخرجه واكحل ناظرنا بنظرة منا إليه واجعلنا من المستشهدين بين يديه اللهم اجعلنا ممن يذكر فتنفعه الذكرى إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون